Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to our webinar today on database quality best practices. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to go over a few housekeeping items for this presentation. As you might see, there is not a call-in number available, and audio is being broadcast through your computer speakers. So if you're having trouble hearing us now, please try adjusting your computer or earphone volume accordingly. Because this is a streaming broadcast, please close out of any other browsers or large programs to maximize your bandwidth. The presentation window can be expanded or collapsed. To adjust the size to fit your screen, just click and drag the bottom right corner window, and you can make it larger or smaller as you needed. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A dialog widget as you see at the bottom of your toolbar, and we'll be glad to answer questions throughout the presentation, and then we'll also be taking further questions at the end. Everyone will receive a recording of this presentation right after we're finished, and we'll be glad to send out slides after the fact as well. So with that, I'm excited to turn it over to my colleagues, Alan and Courtney, who's going to kick us off.
Great, thanks, John. My name is Alan Dix. I'm a product manager here at Target Analytics, and I focus on our data enrichment product line, which is what we're going to talk through a lot today. Data enrichment is really designed to help you guys maintain the accuracy of the information in your database and help you append information that is useful for your fundraising efforts. I've been here at Blackbaud for about 8 years now, and spent the entire time in Target Analytics, both on the data enrichment side of things as well as the high-touch modeling or predictive analytics that we offer here in Analytics. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm joined by Courtney, who's been with Target Analytics for a couple of years now. Courtney is an account executive who works through a lot of these products with our customers and will be able to share some unique insight. Our agenda today, kind of pretty simple and straightforward. Really want to discuss the role of data hygiene and how our clients are struggling with maintaining the accuracy of their database. We've done a lot of analyses internally here at Blackbaud and discovered that a lot of our clients are struggling with data hygiene and maintaining the accuracy of their data internally. And we'll review a lot of that analysis and talk to you some of the statistics and how it may impact you and your fundraising. We're also going to talk through some best practices and some strategies on how to maintain your database. With that, I'd like to jump in, and we're going to talk a little bit about our data quality scorecard. So the data quality scorecard is really that analysis that we talk through. So we analyzed just under 5,000 clients. I think it was 4,950 clients that we analyzed. We really looked at them across 7 key metrics. The metrics include wrong supporter address. So that is somebody that has actually moved. The address you have on file is an old address. We look at invalid addresses. So an invalid address is somebody that maybe you've entered the information in incorrectly. The address you have on file is not a deliverable address in the United States. We look at deceased records. How many deceased records are in your database that are not marked deceased? And then we did an analysis across 4 metrics to determine how many of each of those metrics are you missing in your database. And we look at email, phone, age, and gender. And the goal there is really to look at the coverage and see kind of what coverage you have across those metrics to make sure that you guys are collecting that information so that you can leverage that in your fundraising activities. One of the things we did with the scorecard is when we looked at all 4,900 databases, we were able to benchmark our clients against each other. And the real value there is to not just look at some of the industry metrics that are out there that may or may not pertain to the nonprofit space, but really give you an idea of how well you're doing with your database hygiene compared to your peers. From our perspective, from a Blackbaud perspective, it gave us some unique insight to give an idea of how much of an issue are each of these 7 pieces of database hygiene or database maintenance. How big of an issue is it for our clients, and how can we help them? So with that, we'll just look at a quick scorecard and run through that. Sorry, a little technical difficulties here.
Okay, the data quality scorecard is free to any organization, not just Blackbaud CRM existing customers. And what we would need is your file and all the correct fields specified for your constituent. We will take a look at the setup of what the scorecard looks like. Process takes your contact information from your database, and we grade the data quality across the 7 key metrics Alan pointed out, then roll those up into an overall score to determine the health and efficiency of the database. The screening first evaluates how valid, complete, and accurate an organization's supporter contact information is by testing the data using the U.S. Postal Service techniques such as National Change of Address, the CAS certification. It then evaluates your email and phone coverage and identifies gaps in their existing demographic information such as age and gender. Scores are then assigned by comparing their performance against peer benchmarks and industry best practices for each category. The scorecard assigns the A through F letter grades by comparing the organization's data quality against the other nonprofits and generates a financial impact statement, or the money wasted, and recommends solutions that would fix the problems found. In the top right-hand corner will show your overall score, and this scorecard provides a snapshot view of your overall database health in the form of the comprehensive data quality score. The second section, where it says summary results, breaks down your performance by those specific categories so you can understand where you might have some issues. And then after assessing your performance across each category, the scorecard automatically calculates budget dollars being wasted on non-productive activities under the financial impact, including mailing to invalid addresses, communicating with supporters at expired addresses, and mailing to deceased constituents. And then under recommendations, we will recommend a solution or technique that can help you resolve the issues found. These techniques will include either services or softwares that focus on resolving the specific problem, and each of those recommendations align with the established data quality best practices that we will explain more in depth.
So Courtney, quick question. We got a question in from the chat line. It mentioned on the previous slide that we looked at RE hosted clients. The question online was, is this free for non-hosted clients as well?
Yes. You do not have to have a Blackbaud CRM for us to run the data quality scorecard. It's free to any organization.
So the RE hosted base has this as a benefit of being hosted. This is something we deliver to them on a routine basis. For non-Razor's Edge clients or non-RE hosted clients, we simply need a copy of your data so that we can run the analysis. It typically takes us between 24 and 48 hours to provide a scorecard for you. And it's definitely a free service we offer for all of our clients. So it's definitely something you guys should reach out to us and see if you want to look at your data and see what kind of information it may be helpful to provide to you. All right. So one thing I really like pulling out from this, and this is one of the huge things that we got as a company when we looked at the analysis across all of our databases. Basically, we found that our average client, that over 26% of their database is unmailable. So that's people that have a wrong supporter address, an invalid supporter address, or they're deceased. That was a big, scary number for us. So roughly, a fourth of an average client's database is just not usable information. From a pure mailing perspective, it's a lot of wasted mailing, a lot of wasted postage, but more so from kind of anything you want to do with your database is typically built off of the accuracy of the addresses in your database. So having this much bad data in there limits your ability to do higher level analytics, limits your ability to do simple appends like an email append or a phone append. So it really limits your ability when it comes to using the data at a higher level. We have run these analysis on our clients' data. We're actually in year 3 of this. And what we've seen year over year is a decrease in the quality of the addresses and an increase in the number of deceased records in the system. So we're seeing a 9.6% decrease in the accuracy of the address information and a 4.2% increase in the number of deceased records. So we're trending in the wrong direction. So it's definitely something we hope to reverse over the next couple of years. As we get this message out there, we talk to more clients about some of the issues they're facing and hopefully are able to help them correct some of these issues and this negative trend. One thing I really like to show is that the total cost to our clients, if we were to mail to everybody in our database that comes back as an unmailable, it would cost us over $21 million, almost $22 million, which works out to be about $4,500 per client. So this is something all of our clients are struggling with, and it's definitely something that we as a company would like to help address. So I'd really like to jump into the numbers a little bit more. Looking at the analysis here, we broke it out based in 3 categories. Looking at best-in-class organizations, the average nonprofit, and then lagging nonprofits. So best-in-class was the top 12.5%. Lagging nonprofits is the bottom 25%. So we're really looking at the best of the best, looking at the average, and then looking at those that are struggling a little bit. We're going to dive into this a little bit more, but the key metric I wanted to point out here is that gray bar in the middle. Looking at best-in-class organizations, they're averaging about 6.3% of their database as being unmailable. So only 6.3% of their database has a wrong or an invalid address or is an unmarked deceased record. When you look at the average nonprofit, we talked about this stat, it's 26.06%. And then when you look at the bottom 25%, this number is really scary. It's almost 67%, or 2/3 of their database is just unusable. So best-in-class organizations, so just taking a quick look at them. So this is the top of the pyramid in terms of organizations that are maintaining the accuracy of their database. As you can see, the top 3 statistics are looking fantastic. Outdated supporter information, less than 2%. Typically, about 2% of your file will go bad every quarter. So about 2% of your database will move quarterly. So they're averaging that they have updated their database with address information within the last 90 days. Invalid postal addresses, looking at 4.2%. Would love to see that number getting a little bit lower. One thing I do like to show is looking at the bottom, these organizations are still struggling with gathering email addresses. So although they are better than all of their peers, they're still missing email addresses on 42.7% of their files. So there's definitely some room there. The key with this group is the best-in-class organizations are optimized and ready to utilize their data to a higher level. So if they were to submit their entire database, only 6.3% of their file would be able to be matched based on a first name, last name, and address match, versus other nonprofits that may be looking at a quarter of their file not being able to match based on the accuracy of the address information in their system. Organizations that maintain their data to this level are primed and ready to utilize their data both from a mailing and from an analytics perspective. So when we look at the average nonprofit, the story gets a little bit worse. So we're looking at about 26% of the file is in a state that is not usable. But even beyond that, roughly 50% of their file is missing phone numbers, and 73% of their file is missing email addresses. So not only can they not mail their individuals, they're lacking the phone numbers and emails to really communicate with their donors on an ongoing and successful manner. These organizations are probably at a point where they are looking to do analytics or looking to append data to help them leverage their information even more. But they're going to struggle a little bit because off the bat, they're instantly have 26% of their file that is just not ready for that information. So they're going to have to go through some address cleanup steps prior to being able to maximize their output with any kind of analytics, fundraising, or data appending project that they do. The final group is the lagging nonprofits. So this is the group that are probably not doing a tremendous amount of mailing because their data is just not at a point where they can do it. They were to send out a piece of mail to 100 individuals, 67 of those would not receive that piece of mail. So they're really struggling, probably from a fundraising perspective, but also from a data hygiene perspective. They're really struggling to do anything about it. So they really need to dig in, do deep analysis of their data, and really get their data to a point where they can actually leverage it both from a fundraising and from a analytics or a matching point of view. The story gets worse when you start looking at some of the other statistics. Missing email addresses on 96% of their file. Missing demographic information on, for age information, 95% of the file. Gender, it's 84% of the file. Really struggling overall in terms of any form of data hygiene. So what do the best-in-class do differently that other nonprofits don't? So they go through a pretty rigorous cleanup effort. So the first piece is the validation. So this is at the point of entry, when you're entering the data into the system, making sure that the information goes into the system accurately. So one of the biggest issues we see, and this is where that invalid address metric comes from, is that organizations will type in an address incorrectly into their Razor's Edge or their CRM, whatever system they are using, and the information goes in incorrectly, so maybe the city and the state are missing, or the address is mistyped, just a simple data entry error that now renders that address as being an invalid address, and it becomes something that is very difficult and oftentimes very costly to fix down the road. So these organizations either internally have strict policies in terms of how data is entered. Chances are they're limiting data entry into the system to a select group who are following these procedures, or they're leveraging a piece of software that helps to make sure that the information goes in correctly. In the Blackbaud world, that piece of software is typically the Address Accelerator or Address Validation for BBCRM. It's a tool that will simply not allow you to type in an invalid address into the Razor's Edge or BBCRM, so that you're sure that the address you type in is a valid U.S. address. Outside of the Blackbaud universe, there are other pieces of software that are available that can assist you with this process. Definitely a big key with data hygiene. Make sure the data is typed into the database as quickly and accurately as possible. From there, our clients dive into additional data cleanup. They look at making sure the information is CAS certified. They'll apply an apartment append. An apartment append is simply making sure that all elements of the address are present. So you're looking at your directionals like North Main Street versus just Main Street, but also apartment numbers. An example I like to use here is like New York City. If you're sending a piece of mail to a building that has 600 apartments, you better be sure that you have that apartment number, or that piece of mail is not getting to its intended destination. It may make it to that building, but chances are it is not actually making it to the apartment that you are trying to get it to. Then the clients will run the data through NCOA, typically on a quarterly basis, making sure that the data makes it back into their database. From there, they run a PCOA service, so it's a proprietary change of address service, and that's simply, typically, NCOA catches about 70 to 75% of address moves annually. There's an additional 25% that are individuals that don't fill out a change of address card. These are people that will just let their bank or their credit card or their utility companies know that they've changed address, and typically they'll do a lot of their stuff online. All their billing will come online, so they don't need to update everybody. And oftentimes in the mix is nonprofit organizations miss those changes and can't track those individuals forward. All those different companies, your utilities, your Verizons, your AT&Ts, they all roll up that data, any address moves, they sell it on to companies who compile it and turn it into a proprietary change of address service. The best-in-class organizations typically leverage one of those services to make sure their data is as accurate as possible. From there, they'll typically do a deceased screening on an annual basis, and then constituent data integration, or a dedupe effort, is typically, at least the database is analyzed on an annual perspective. Typically, they'll actually do a full dedupe project on an annual basis. And what that enables you to do is to make sure that your data is ready to do any kind of fundraising effort that you need, or any other kind of deep dive into analytics or pending additional information. So what does the average nonprofit do? And this is, I was working in sales with this product line for 5 or 6 years. Courtney's been working on it a couple of years, and she can probably back me up here. Typically, we hear our clients tell us that they do an NCOA, maybe quarterly, maybe it makes it back into the database. They might just do it through their mail house, and the data just, the data is updated as it goes out the door, but it never actually makes it into their system of record. So the best-in-class organizations always make sure that the information makes it back into the database, but they also make sure they do all of those additional steps other than just relying on the NCOA as the sole way to update their database.
And here are some of our best practices that we recommend. Like Alan said, we get a lot of clients wondering how often you should be running these services to make sure you have updated contact information. For example, 11% of existing donors change their addresses each year, so it makes it very difficult to efficiently connect, convey your message, and maintain that strong relationship with those people. Donors often use more than one email address as well, and they can change them often. So that's why we suggest running Email Finder, for example, at least once a year. And there you can see the national change of address quarterly. It's just better to make sure that we're keeping everything up to date for all of your constituents.
So that quarterly run of the NCOA also falls under the 95-day rule from the USPS. They recommend, or they require you to run your addresses through a NCOA screening to receive bulk mail discounts, which is another reason why we recommend that quarterly screening. So one of the things I really like to kind of highlight in terms of a best practice is the little graphic on the right-hand side, which shows you that this is really a process. So it all starts with collecting, validating, standardizing, and we'll kind of walk through this. I just want to highlight that database hygiene, it's not something that you do and then 2 years from now you come back and you do it again. It is something that should be built into your everyday efforts and should also be something that is an ongoing process so that you guys have a plan on how to actually maintain your database over the next 2, 3, 5, however many years. So that process, as I mentioned previously, really begins with collecting and validating the information in your database. So that begins with making sure that you have all of the processes and business rules established internally to make sure that data goes into the database in a standardized, uniform, and hopefully correct format so that you guys can maintain that database accuracy. By standardizing and validating the data when it comes in, it makes appending information at a later time much easier. It also helps with identifying duplicates. If you have your addresses in all sorts of different formats, or some are slightly misspelled or missing zip codes, identifying duplicates becomes a really big problem. So it's really important to make sure that you get the information into the database as seamlessly and easily and also as accurately as possible. The next kind of step in the workflow here is to update, consolidate, and suppress. And so this is really where we start looking at doing address updates, deceased suppression, and then evaluating your duplicates. So when I say update, I really mean running an NCOA service on a quarterly basis, and then on an annual basis start looking at a deeper dive. So that could include the PCOA, the apartment append, and the deceased suppression. The final piece is the suppression piece, suppressing the deceased, but also suppressing any duplicates that are in your system. So you've got to make sure that you stay on top of that. We have clients that come to us, and on an annual basis, we'll do small dedupe projects for them. They're relatively inexpensive, and we work with them, and the process is really easy. I've worked with a couple really large clients recently, and they have come to us, and one client had 34 million records that they sent to us and for us to analyze, and we identified 11 million duplicates. So it's something that had gotten really out of control for them, and it became an enormous project to clean up all of those records. Now, the economy of scale there is huge, so we're talking about an enormous database, but just they had roughly 33% of their database was duplicates, and at that point you're starting to look at a huge cleanup effort, both in terms of costs as well as time invested in cleaning it. So we recommend at least analyzing your duplicates on an annual basis, and most CRM systems have a way, if your addresses are up to date, for you to do an analysis internally to determine how many duplicates you are. It probably paints the picture. It'll probably tell you, if it tells you have 10,000 duplicates, you probably really have 12,000 if you were to start playing with the matching logic. But it'll give you a picture of the number of duplicates in your system and give you an idea of whether that's something you need to look at investing in terms of actually cleaning up all of those duplicates, either as a manual internal process or working with a company like us to help you do it on a global basis. The final piece here is really kind of the fun stuff, right? So we've talked about cleaning up the data. We've talked about validating it, making sure it goes in accurately, making sure that we're updating it on a regular basis. But what we really want to do is get to a point where all of that is pretty seamless. We have a process in place. We have our schedule laid out for the year. These are the 5 things we're going to do to make sure our data is as clean as possible. Now let's focus on actually appending information. So it starts with your contact appends, making sure that you've got great coverage with your phone, email, and social media so that you can reach out to donors in a way that they want to be reached out to. I will use this example. My wife and I am blessed to have a wonderful wife who pays all of our bills and takes care of it. I would be lost and useless without her. It's fantastic. I'm a very lucky individual. I look at mail about once a month, and that's when she hands me something that I probably should read. I'm really lucky. I know I'm spoiled. That being said, I'm sitting here with my phone beside me, emails popping through. I'm anxious to check them after the call because that's just my preferred mean of communication. So I always am available via email. Direct mail is not the channel to reach me. So it's important to make sure that you boost the additional channels so that you can contact your individuals based on their preferred channel as well as what's cost effective and useful for you guys. Beyond that, there's all sorts of demographic information that you can append. We have about 600 different appends that we offer here in Target Analytics, ranging from age, income, discretionary spend. We can tell you what kind of magazines people are subscribing to, all sorts of crazy stuff to help you segment your database and help you better target your donor database. So to make sure that you can provide the right message to the right people so that you can end up soliciting them in a way that is appealing to them and beneficial for you guys as an organization. And then finally, kind of one of the huge elements of Target Analytics is being able to do prospect research, predictive analytics, and applying wealth information. And ultimately the goal there is really to identify who are your best prospects in your database, allow you to do the research on them so that you can then solicit them for the larger major gifts, planned gifts, principal gifts. Without clean data, it's very difficult to get to that point.
And this is an example of a client who came to us that needed some help with their database. It was a family human services organization, and you can see from the percentages there, they had a lot of issues with their data. 11.42% of their addresses were old or invalid, so that's a large chunk of mail that's not being delivered to potential donors in your database. And after viewing the results, they went forward with several of our services to help clean up some of those areas. And just an example of how we turned around their database, this is what their scorecard looked like afterwards. And they took advantage of a lot of different services, not including the deceased record finder, but since then they have actually moved forward with it, seeing the return on investment from all of the other services they went with from us.
What's really cool about this organization is we were able to do the scorecard for them. We were able to define some areas that they needed to work on. And we really kind of worked with them to develop a plan on how to correct some of their issues, as well as figure out a plan on how to maintain that data going forward. One of the things they wanted to own was fixing the deceased records internally. They really felt like that was something that they could handle, either through searching through obituaries or some of the other websites online. And what we discovered after a year is that the plan we worked out with them, and some of it we owned and some of it they did, really did a fantastic job helping them fix their address issues, help them with their phone and email. And this organization put a huge emphasis on any piece of mail that went out the door included a way for a donor to update their phone or email information. The same with their website. So between some of our help and some of the work they did, we were able to fix a lot of those issues. But they came back after a year and we ran the scorecard. We kind of all did a little high five because they did a great job on some of these metrics. And then we figured out that their approach to cleaning up the deceased records wasn't really working. And we were able to reevaluate, and we adjusted the plan. And we actually ran a scorecard recently with this organization. And they're back down to, their scoring is an A in deceased records. They've had a few that have popped through since they ran the service. But it's kind of a cool way that we identified the issues, we devised a plan between some of the stuff they did, some of the stuff we did, and we're seeing great results out of it, and so is this organization.
And a lot of organizations will see multiple areas within their scorecard that they could improve their data. So we have created these different bundle services where we loop in the address finder, address accelerator, and deceased record finder, where we can help you save some money on getting several services at once. And a lot of customers find this one in particular, the Data Quality Essentials, to be extremely valuable and the best way to fit their needs. Another bundle option we have, if phone numbers and email addresses are important to your organization, this one would also loop in those other services. If you're heavy on phone-a-thons or sending out emails about events, different stuff like that.
One of the cool things about both of these bundles is we created them after developing the scorecards. And the goal with both of them is to address two common areas that we saw our clients struggling with. For a lot of our clients, it was that unmailable piece where it's wrong addresses, invalid addresses, and deceased records. So that first bundle is really designed to help them fix that one issue that a lot of our clients are facing. And the second bundle was designed to also address the email and the phone elements of it, which is another area that was really important to our clients. And we set these up as a 36-month plan. So they're designed to help give you guys that structure that we know we're going to do NCUA quarterly. We're going to have the address accelerator set up so that it makes sure that we are validating addresses upon entry, and then we're doing the deceased record screening annually. So it gives you that 36-month plan to help you maintain that database, to kind of get you used to that cycle. of making sure you're doing the 3 or 4 different things that you need to for your particular database needs.
And I just want to address a question that came up. Someone asked about the subscription with several different services. All of our services you can buy separately or individually, but we do offer the bundle option to save some money with getting multiple services at one time.
Right. So this is one of those quotes that's out there that you really wish you had said. So like I said, I've been working in the data enrichment space for a long time now. And from McKinsey & Company, we bring you a great quote. Basically, if you bring garbage into a great model, and in this case, you can insert anything into a great fundraising campaign, a great data append project, or great predictive analytics models is what it's really referring to here. If you bring garbage into that process, you're not going to get good results. So having good data cleansing, and having good data governance is really important to make sure that you can be successful in anything you do on any element with your data. Again, across fundraising, appending, or any kind of analysis that you want to do. So one of those quotes that I really wish I had have said, and could credit myself on this, but Matt beat me to it. With that said, we want to kind of open the floor a little bit here for the last few minutes so that we can address some questions. So one of the questions we saw online here is, so what should we do with bad constituents? Deceased, lost, etc. So let me address that. So with bad constituents, typically you just want to make sure that you can identify them so that they're excluded from any kind of mail campaign or any kind of fundraising efforts that you're doing. So for your deceased individuals, you just want to make sure that they're marked in the database so that you're not wasting money mailing them. A lot of organizations will reach out to the families in a kind of soft approach after they've identified somebody as deceased. We typically don't recommend deleting those individuals from your system. Just from a historic perspective, you don't want to lose that information. The other thing is, particularly with deceased individuals, you'll often see a surviving spouse kind of continue to donate in their deceased spouse name for a charity that they were particularly close with, just out of respect for their deceased spouse. I don't see any other questions circling through. So if you guys have any questions, please let us know, and we'll try and address those. So we'll give it another minute for any kind of questions to pop through. So one question is was asked about finding out specifics around pricing for some of those bundles that we offer. If you reach out to us directly, we will be sending an email out post-webinar. It'll include the recording, and if you just reach back out to us, we'll make sure we get you in contact with an account executive. The pricing is all dependent on record volume and which services you'd like to go with. So I can't give pricing on the phone here today, but we can definitely get you in touch with the right people. So one of the questions was, are your products compatible with eTapestry? eTapestry is compatible with most of the services that we've talked about today. Address Accelerator is not something that is compatible with eTapestry. Everything else that we've talked about today, depending on your package on eTapestry, you may have access to the Address Finder or the NCOA service that's available for clients that are on the Essentials or Pro level of eTapestry. If you are on the starter level of eTapestry, you can gain access to a scorecard through your dashboards. Another question we had is, do you have any recommendations for small organizations that are understaffed? My recommendation is to take advantage of anything that Blackbaud offers for free. We offer that scorecard for free, so reach out to us and we can run that scorecard for you. We can tell you where you're struggling so that you can make sure that you focus your efforts in the right area. And when I say focus your efforts, I'm talking about both monetarily and your time. One of the things we find with all organizations, whether they're small or large, is the ability to dedicate time to actually address some of these issues. You can actually, you guys, a question came in, who do we contact to have a data quality scorecard done? Courtney is actually going to be a great resource for that, so we'll make sure we include her contact information on the email that we send out post-webinar.
And again, anyone who registered for the webinar, even if they did not attend, if you had other staff members that couldn't join us, they will get a copy of the presentation afterwards. It's another question that came through.
We have some additional questions that have come through on the line. They seem like they're pretty specific to organizations. So we'll reach back out to those individuals individually to answer those questions. But I really appreciate you guys taking some time to talk with us today. I hope you guys were able to gain a couple nuggets that you're able to take back and use in your daily database maintenance practices. If we can be of any assistance, please let us know. As I mentioned, we'll be sending out the recording and the slide deck after this meeting, and we'll also include Courtney's contact information for anybody that is interested in a data quality scorecard. But we really appreciate your time, and we hope you have a wonderful day.
Good afternoon, everyone. We'd like to welcome you to our webinar today on database quality best practices. Before we get started, I'd like to take a minute to go over a few housekeeping items for this presentation. As you might see, there is not a call-in number available, and audio is being broadcast through your computer speakers. So if you're having trouble hearing us now, please try adjusting your computer or earphone volume accordingly. Because this is a streaming broadcast, please close out of any other browsers or large programs to maximize your bandwidth.